name is Sara Naison-Tarajano. I am a partner in asset and wealth management at Goldman Sachs. I lead our global sales and trading business, as well as our global family office business, Goldman Sachs Apex. Goldman Sachs is thrilled to host this important event, and I am honored to be able to kick it off with this fantastic panel. So I'm joined by Cecilia Kushner, who's the Executive Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer at the New York City Economic Development Corporation, and Stephan van Wolff, who is the Managing Director at SWABI US. So let's get started. Maybe we'll kick it off with you, Cecilia. Give us a little bit of background. What is EDC for those who don't know? And then if you could paint a picture of New York City's vision for a green economy. How is the EDC working to position New York as a global leader in the green urban innovation space?
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So for those of you who don't know, EDC is the economic development arm of the City of New York. Our broad mission is to create a vibrant, globally competitive economy that works for all New Yorkers. We are not a city agency. We're set up slightly differently. We manage, on behalf of the city, about 65 million square feet of real estate, and we use the proceeds of these real estates to invest in what we call innovation industry. So it's been the tech sector for the last 20 years, life science for the last 10, and the green economy over the last 5. In February, we released, and I brought it, sorry to be like nerdy, this report, which is called the Green Economy Action Plan. It's the first broad economic study of the city into the potential of the green economy. Today, we believe we have about 130,000 New Yorkers who are working in the 21 different industries and sub-industries that make up the green economy. So that's building decarbonization, transportation, broadly climate tech and innovation, but also workforce providers. And our ambition is that by 2040, we have 400,000 New Yorkers that work in the green economy. So this plan is 63 specific investments that the city will be doing over the next 5 to 10 years, many of them being led by EDC. They span from tax incentive to leverage city-owned land to doing innovation studios and supporting companies, which I think is a lot of what we'll be discussing this morning. But this is kind of the broad framework and infrastructure for what we believe will be a really important industry for the future of the diversification of the economy in New York.
Fantastic. So maybe we'll turn it over to Stephan. If you could tell us a little bit about SWABI, tell us about the company, and tell us why the partnership with EDC was appealing to you and made sense.
Well, yeah, thank you, first of all, for having us here. Most of you, or probably all of you, will not know SWABI. We're a Berlin-based startup. We just expanded to the US. And basically what we do is battery swapping. We are building a battery swapping platform for anything that's smaller than a car, for micromobility. So that's e-bikes, e-scooters, and e-mopeds. And in very simple terms, our users can swap an empty for a full battery at any of our stations within seconds and continue on their journey. So it's comparable to filling up your car at a gas station, but you just swap an empty for a full battery. So that's basically what we're doing. And that has numerous advantages for micromobility, and that's why we always say we really enable micromobility in a certain way in cities, and therefore support the decarbonization. And for us as a company, why does it make sense to partner with agencies like EDC? We have been looking at the US market for quite a while, probably 2 to 3 years. And we always wanted to come to the US, but we were also well aware of the regulatory environment over here and the specific market dynamics. So there was a lot of risk for us involved to do that step, especially like a financial upfront risk that we would have had to take. And then we were asked by the Department of Transport, DOT, EDC, and New Lab to participate in a battery swapping pilot here in New York City. And that for us was a very easy decision to take, because that initially meant we could de-risk that case, right? So it was a very lean and efficient way of coming to New York. We were able to cut through the regulatory red tape way faster than we could have done by ourselves. And because the pilot initially was quite small and quite focused, it really helped us iterate the program, the product, way faster in terms of software and hardware based on the customer feedback that we got. So for companies like ours, which have to be very careful with the resources, doing a market entry to such a regulated environment really only makes sense if you have government support, as we've as we've had over the past months.
So let's maybe dig in a little bit more to how that partnership came about. And Cecilia, maybe, tell us what role EDC played in sort of facilitating that partnership, but then also a little insight into how you see the importance of this sort of public sector, private sector partnership to sort of reach your ultimate goals at the organization.
Yeah, so it's extremely exciting to have this conversation because this is exactly what we're in the business of doing. Yeah. So we want to de-risk climate innovation and international companies coming here and enter the market and decarbonize New York City as a whole. So as part of the Green Economy Action Plan, we formed a partnership that we call the Harbor Climate Collaborative. It's between EDC, the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and Governor's Island. And Governor's Island is building like the largest university, the Climate Exchange, that's going to be dedicated to climate change research. And Brooklyn Navy Yard is, as many of you know, I'm sure, a really large manufacturer, stakeholders, mission-driven organization. And then EDC in Sunset Park, we own and manage 200 acres of land that's dedicated to green manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, and where we're also building the largest offshore wind port that will fuel about like a third of all homes in Brooklyn. And so these triangle, all connected by ferry, we decided was the best place for climate tech companies, both domestic and international, to be able to pilot on all of our assets, as well as be linked with operators and innovators like New Lab in the Brooklyn Navy Yard that can really kind of de-risk and bring in people into the market. And so this is exactly your experience, which is working with New Lab on an innovation studio that we're funding for the city to try to resolve a very complex policy issue, which is fires related to small batteries and delivery workers, piloting on our assets, and then being part of a broader ecosystem that we are continuously facilitating so that companies feel that they actually have a network here and that they're also linked to academic research institute. And then finally, working with regulatory agencies. So working with the Department of Building, working with the fire department to show them how new technology could be resolving problems, which means sometimes that codes need to be updated. And so engaging in this regulatory reform, which takes a really long time, but can really only happen as a public-private partnership.
Great, and I think, let's maybe, Stephan, get under the hood a little bit, especially for this audience on what it's like for a European company to kind of think about this partnership in the US. And I would specifically like to understand any differences you notice in working with European government and organizations versus the US. Good, bad, like take us under the hood there.
Well, yeah, this might sound surprising coming from a German or German-based company, but there's a lot more regulation in the US actually than we had over there, which we would have not thought originally. This being said, while of course most agencies, as anywhere in the world, want to do things by the book, we also really noticed a massive degree of support and flexibility in certain processes. They really had an understanding that there is a problem. You just mentioned it, the battery house fires in New York, which we had last year, I think nearly 270 house fires. So there's a pressing problem that needs to be solved. And they recognized this, and there was a lot of flexibility. Just a very simple example, because we engaging with the Department of Transport, they required us to go through the full due diligence of their cybersecurity team initially, which doesn't really make sense because we only put up battery swapping stations on DOT property. They're not really purchasing the software from us. Mm-hmm. So once we explained that to them, they said, okay, we're just going to have a screening of your software. They pointed out a couple of vulnerabilities, we fixed them, and we moved on, right? So there was a lot of flexibility there. And what we've really noticed, a positive difference between Europe and the US, is that any agencies here, be it EDC, the Department of Transport, DOT, or also FDNY, they were very engaged and are very engaged in shaping the infrastructure and micromobility landscape. So I've never seen that really happen in Germany. In Germany, it's more like you have your guidelines and you stick to it, and that's it. But here, it's way more of a dialogue and trying to find common ground and trying to move things forward, even if there is more regulation.
And do you feel like that process from a speed perspective is slower, about the same? I think that's something that always comes up with regulation. What does that feel like working in the US?
So it's twofold. For the pilot, it was actually quite fast because we were allowed to, I wouldn't say cut some corners, but move certain obstacles out of the way.
Yeah.
But now we're going into the stage where we're going to do the public rollout of our network. And that's where we really have to go through all the regulations and the bureaucracy. And that definitely takes a lot more than in Europe.
Interesting. And then, maybe back over to Cecilia. When you think about, the mission of EDC, what role do you see international companies playing in this? I mean, when you think about who you're partnering with, what percentage of those are international companies? Is it a high percentage, small percentage? And how do you really think about it when you think about the vision going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we see, climate change is a global issue, so
Yeah.
we will take the best ideas. We're a hyper urban environment, obviously, in New York City, and so actually a lot of the technologies that may be most relevant to our environment come from hyper urban environments, like outside of the US. So we looked at all of the innovation studios that we run. We run a mass timber innovation studio, a resilient energy and battery storage, the micromobility one that you have, and we pilot on all of our assets, and about a third to half of the companies that participate are actually international companies. So we see a big influx of interest in entering the American market, and I think using the de-risking practices that we have to facilitate this. We also do really large deals with international companies. So the offshore wind farm that we are creating in Sunset Park at SBMT is with Equinor, with a very large Norwegian company. We're constantly going I was at Viva Tech last year. We have team members going to Slush. So we're constantly looking and meeting with companies and looking at what are the best ideas that are the most relevant to our environment, and what are the companies that we should be attracting here that can be helpful to solving our problems.
Fantastic. And we'll turn it back to Schwabi. I would like to know, as a New Yorker, one, how do people interact with your company? Is it you sign up online sort of thing? Are there stations? Are you ready for sort of full rollout? I know your pilot project was small. You focused on 40 delivery workers. Maybe take us through what the ultimate vision is, and also how people in this room could interface with the company if they desire to do so.
Yeah, so the initial pilot was very small, very focused. It was a hand-picked, selected group of users. Later, for our public rollout, it's going to be very simple. It's basically an app sign-up, and that gives you access to our network. You get a battery out of the station, and you're ready to go. It's a plug-and-play solution, the way we're going to roll it out. Why did we come to New York, and why did we do this step? Because New York has this unique, diverse group of users, being the delivery riders, which come from all different countries, which speak numerous different languages. Mm-hmm. And in Europe, our customers were mainly B2B, so large logistic companies, fleet operators, these type. Here, we've got a B2C use case with this diverse group. So there's completely different challenges that we had to tackle, be it language, usability of the app, payment processes, and so on and so on. So our vision really is to prove that battery swapping can work at scale here in New York City in a diverse group of users, and then use this tech stack that we're building from software to stations to battery hardware to deploy it internationally. We've got quite a few requests from different countries, Africa, Asia, and South America. Mm-hmm. And actually, we want to prove it over here and then basically franchise it in different countries.
And is the focus exclusively on delivery workers, or is there some direct to consumer where you're going to address how people commute to work and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so our first stage really is delivery workers, because that's our first vertical. And then we've also got applications for logistic companies. So be that for instance, Amazon, parcel delivery, who use e-cargo bikes. We can also service e-mopeds and also private users who want to charge their own batteries. But these are technologies which we're only deploying later next year.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Maybe we'll turn it back to you, Cecilia, in terms of, when you think about all the work you're doing here, and actually, to realize that such a large percentage of your partnership are international companies is really fascinating. It feels like a very big undertaking to think about somebody in another country, finding your organization in New York, creating that partnership. But obviously, it's quite impactful hearing Stephan talk about it. Are there any, especially founders in this room, et cetera, key takeaways for how international companies should work with you, work with the EDC? Is there sort of a checklist that we can think about in terms of best practices?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a business development team that's really focused on the verticals of innovation industry we invest in, so tech, green economy, and life science. They're there to really support any company, large or small, that wants to enter the New York City market. And so we help companies navigate from the very basics, like what are the neighborhoods in New York City where one could open a very small, cheaper rent office? What are the type of network makers like New Lab that the company could partner with if they feel like they need a little bit more support in terms of acceleration and getting ready for the VC market? What are the academic institutions that are doing very cutting-edge research that is extremely relevant to what it is that they do and what their product is? What is the suite of tax incentive that the city and the state offer for companies that come here? So we're there to just basically welcome companies with the suite of everything that the city has to offer and help them navigate New York City and all of its offerings. So that's one of the things that we do. The second thing is that we have a lot at EDC of our own tools that we've deployed to facilitate the acceleration of the development of the green economy in New York. So we offer property tax incentive for commercial battery development at scale. We often have requests for proposal that leverages city land for the development of EV and solar large-scale panels. As I've just mentioned, we are doing like the largest offshore wind ports in New York City. And so there are constantly just like public procurement opportunities for companies, domestic but also international companies, to be able to enter the market if they are at a larger scale that can actually like deploy and operate something and be responsive to the city's need. And so I think we're trying to corner all sections of the market, small companies, really large companies, to just really accelerate and bring like the best and brightest of what the products are globally that can really help us to solve climate change in New York.
It's amazing. I would be curious, just is this something you see happening in other cities in the United States? And is part of your role to sort of come up with a bit of a national perspective on this, given the breadth of the need to focus on climate change?
So we've been looking, and that was part of our plan, what everyone else is doing around the country. We are very unique just because of the density of our built environment and because building decarbonization is like our biggest challenge. Which is not necessarily the case for other cities in the US where like transportation or energy transition may be their biggest challenge. I think we're also a little bit unique because we have the most rigorous regulations in the United States, Local Law 97, to decarbonize buildings. And so there is a regulatory incentive for property owners to do better, and there is a market pressure because I think also in New York we're seeing that having a clean building or having a clean product is actually something that is value adding in the market. And so we think we're quite unique, actually, and that we have a proposition that is different, and then we're like the biggest economy in the US. And we have the most job that we've ever had in our history. Just last month we actually broke our record for the most job in New York City's history, 4.7 million. And so we think we're a very unique proposition that is more of a global proposition.
Well, as a born and bred New Yorker, I thank you both for your focus on this incredibly important initiative. I really enjoyed this discussion. I learned a lot. I want to thank everyone here for being a part of this super important day. And so with that, we will turn it over to the next set of speakers. Thank you so much.